Well, here we are nearly at the end of January. There's a stretch to the evenings, as Pat, I'm sure, will confirm. But we'll have to stretch your intelligence because we're going to be talking about important topics. Would you agree, Pat?
Absolutely. By the way, I bet you've noticed my background is much changed.
Aye, you've
I
been
don't know.
plunged into darkness. Your face is like one of the apostles coming down from the mountain after
Yeah,
the
I
transfiguration.
should have put on something more colourful, but my computer seems to be acting up. I'm having to use my phone for Zoom. So it looks like my face is coming out of some ethereal someone or other.
You could
Anyway,
fit in. You
uh,
could fit into one of these Nordic noir films. It's
yeah,
no series with no bother.
no bother. Yeah. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, let's get going here. Right, you picked out the first three subjects, which I think all of which are really good. I think. Anyway, your first one was about Richie Sunak and Nadeem Zahawi. It's amazing the different names, the Indian names, become so used to. At first, it was hard to get your tongue
Yeah,
around them. But anyway, your man Zahawi is having trouble with his tax affairs. Johnson is revealed to have got a £800,000 unsecured loan. A Tory MP has said that nurses are more than who get more than £40,000 a year shouldn't need to go to food banks. And you're asking, is this double standards? Is that what you're saying, by the way, Pat?
yeah. Yeah, no, Jude, it's just in a space of about 3 days. I read on, I think, Saturday. I can't remember the name. The girl who's the Labour Party, it'll come to me eventually. Deputy Leader Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
She said Sawawi's position was untenable. He was the Chancellor of the Exchequer for some time, the man who's responsible for the tax revenue system in Britain. And she says apparently he, by all accounts, is alleged, particularly I think in the Guardian, that he recently reached a settlement that cost somewhere in the region of between 4.5 and 5 million with the revenue authorities. Now that's unbelievable. That and yeah, this is the implications that his tax affairs were not in order, and that he had paid a penalty of some kind for not paying his tax properly. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that they say that's the implication. Then yesterday I read that Boris Johnson had got an unsecured loan of 800,000, and the person who facilitated or was the conduit was the chairman of the BBC. Yesterday morning, on Laura Kuenssberg's program, Boris's sister was apparently one of the guests, and there was another Tory person whose name escapes me again, was on, and both seemed to know nothing about it and weren't really confronted that much about it. So here's we move on. Now, apparently, I didn't see this at all. Apparently, Sophie Ridge in Sky News had a very good interview where she really did probe it, but I didn't see that, so I can't speak about that. But then, Jude, I was reading yesterday evening, I was sitting down, and somebody sent me this thing. A Tory MP said any nurse who's on 40-something thousand a year should not have recourse to food banks. And I'm going, 40,000? And say any nurse, Jude, who has 2 or 3 kids, maybe one heading to university, trying to keep a car going, paying for food, 40,000 is nothing anymore.
Yeah.
Jude, and I'm thinking, are these people so out of touch with the reality of people's lives that the arrogance has become so overweening that that they should be turfed out?
Well, I agree with you there, Pat. Definitely, that these guys are totally out of touch because nobody goes to a food bank and that can do something else. You just
Yeah,
wouldn't do it if you possibly could.
yeah,
Go and do your own shopping. You're not going to go to a food bank and say I'm bereft. There's a strong sense of, I don't know what you would call it, self-reliance in people. I'd imagine in England the same
yeah,
as here, and that's the last thing you do. However, to take the other two things, Zahawi's tax affairs. Well, I have some
yeah.
sympathy there because what happened, I gather he didn't break the law, but he tried to sort of gloss over, or did he not pay some money that he then had to pay?
Well,
But nobody likes paying
well,
tax.
isn't there a big difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance?
Aye, that's right. Yeah, but none of us would want to pay more tax than we have to pay. And if there's some guy, if we've got a high flying lawyer or whatever accountant working for us, and he says, "Well, if you do this with your money, you'll save tax," I think the average person would do it. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Or is it that
Ah,
we just
yeah.
don't like
But
Zahawi?
but
Maybe he's an ugly looking saw it.
No, look, the fact is, Tory's enough for me. That's but
Ugly
the
enough.
point is, yeah, the simple thing about it, surely these people, if you're going to be the lawmaker, you can't be a lawbreaker.
But did he break
You
the
have to
law,
be
Pat?
held.
That's the point. Did he
Well,
break the law?
that's well, no, it probably didn't technically or specifically break the law, but I would think and he technically broke it in the sense that he should have paid his tax on time.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And what about bars? I mean, getting an unsecured loan or a loan, are you saying that the chairman of the BBC essentially went guarantor for him for this loan?
Well, he must have facilitated it in some way because it said that the conduit obviously maybe introduced him to some banker and says, "Look, this is Boris Johnson, and I'll go guarantor for the guy," and all the rest of it. But apparently, he got 800,000 to fund his lifestyle.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Well, his lifestyle does burn money. I'm sure of that. But the other thing is that he can make an awful lot of money very quickly. Like he gets what, a couple of million or something a year for his column.
And he's treasured, as said it there quite recently, more than 1 million and something like about 3 months and of speeches. You know?
Yeah. You see, so these guys are rich. Again, I'm not at all surprised that the chairman of the BBC or the former chairman of the BBC would be mates with Boris. I think that goes without saying. I mean, if you look at it this way, if you were the chairman of the BBC and you had an opportunity to spend a night having a bit of crack with Boris, he'd be good company. He'd be good company. He'd be full of laughs and jokes and stories, he's a sparkling personality.
But hold on, Dr. Collins. A couple of months back, there was a program, I think it was the MASH report. I can't remember exactly what the title of it was. And there's this guy called Nish Kumar, I think his name is. He's a sort of Asian or Indian background guy, very, very funny, very intelligent guy. And he had this sort of program as well, Left Wing. It was after about 4 or 5 episodes, it was basically dumped because it attacked the government. And apparently the chairman of BBC was the guy who was behind the dumping of the program. Jude, you just got to ask yourself, is it all? Where's the ideology here? The prime minister gets an 800, or the former prime minister gets an £800,000 unsecured loan, facilitated in some way by the chairman of the BBC, and there's no politics, no ideology. What is it? What's the sort of impartiality there?
Well, I mean, I admire your trusting nature when you use the word impartiality and the BBC in the same sentence. I think we both know that.
Yes,
we both know in all sorts of ways.
With you.
Leave me out of it. There's loads of other examples. That the BBC, the BBC is part of the establishment. So we shouldn't be too surprised if they prop up figures from the establishment. And in fact, it would be very naive.
Dr. Collins, you just said something there, by the way. Ken Loach just saw over the weekend too, just came across on social media, a thing where he said, without question, the BBC had played a major role in the absolute screwing of Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, well, that was outrageous. It really was.
He said that wasn't even a matter of opinion. He says it's a matter of fact. And he says the facts are there. And there's some report there recently into what happened in the Labour Party. And, it stinks.
Yeah, it does. It does. It'll make it very hard I'll never be voting for the Labour Party anyway, but I imagine any, as I say, right-thinking person would think twice before they would vote for the Labour Party after them doing what they did to Corbyn. I mean, it wasn't as if he was going to be bad for the Labour Party. Jesus, people were piling in to join it. And they just threw all that away because he was actually a socialist.
Yeah, a socialist, the old... but of course, Jude, I came to the conclusion some time back, and I've met quite a few English people. Basically, the English people are right of centre. They've bought into this royalty, the old army colonels, and they all want to be like the old aristocracy. They like that upstairs, downstairs, or Downtown Abbey, or what the hell they're called. They've bought into that whole, and they love it.
I do remember we'll leave it at this. Do you remember there was a little skit with John Cleese, Ronnie Corbett, and somebody else in the middle, And
Barker, Ronnie Barker, I look up to him, and he.
That's right.
Yeah,
I know my place.
I know my place. Yeah,
There's something about a great truth in that. I think that a lot of
yeah,
English people and probably Irish people too, who would say, you know your place. Really, you shouldn't be
yeah,
thinking above your station. And there's people who
yeah,
know about these things.
absolutely.
Let them run the
Yeah,
show. Okay, let's move from the unhappy subject of Boris Johnson and Richie Sunak and company to Jeremy Clarkson. And Jeremy
yeah,
Clarkson's column where he went to town on Meghan Markle and said that, well, everybody probably knows this, but he said that he hated her so much, he had fantasies about her, and this apparently was lifted from some series or another.
yeah. The Game of
From
Thrones. He
A
alleges,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones, the idea of her walking along in a public street naked and people firing excrement at her. Your question is, should he be allowed to write columns like that? Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, he said he hated her on a cellular level, that he hated her more than he hated Rose West, the multiple serial killer. Or can you be a multiple serial killer? Anyway, and so on. And even his own daughter said, wait a minute, he has crossed the line. This is outright misogyny. Anyway, the reason I brought it up, Jude, I was reading an article in the Spectator again over the weekend where it said, I can't remember the name of the guy, Tom Slater, I think his name was, said, like, people didn't get it, that this was a joke, it was meant to be funny, etc., etc. Now, I thought for a minute one time, wait a minute, is this real? And then I thought, wait a minute, this is absolute bullshit. This was not funny. If I was Meghan Markle, I'm a lady of colour. There's been certain questions been asked, about how she was treated.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you look at Piers Morgan, you look at the Daily Express, you look at the Daily Mail. Your man writes this article, and as discussed, where he made all those comments. If I was Meghan Markle, would I be sitting saying, "Oh, this is hilarious, this is comedic, this is funny"? I'd be saying, "Jesus, wait a minute, this is real hatred, and I am in bother here." But anyway, bottom line was, I think it was something like 19,000 complaints to the press complaints board, or whatever it's called these days. And the Sun apologized. The thing is, but it now looks like Clarkson does a program called, it's Clarkson Farm, and it's someone I can't remember. It's a sort of, he does another program. It's sort of a motoring program, and apparently both are going to be pulled, and he's going to lose both. No, well, Jude, I think he's been getting away with disguised bigotry and smart alecky racism for a long time.
Well, Pat, would you have not allowed him, if you had been the editor of that newspaper, would you not have allowed that column?
Jude, seriously, I would like to think that I thought it crossed the line. I genuinely thought it crossed the line. Jude, this woman, she's a woman of colour. And why, by the way, why is she such a target and Prince Andrew isn't?
Well, yes, that's a good point, all right, which tells you something about the establishment again. But I'll tell you something.
How they shape opinion.
I think Clarkson, I mean, we both know that the name of the game in writing columns is to get people to read them. More people will know about or have read that column than maybe any other column Clarkson wrote. I would say he wrote that with that in mind. I don't believe he said, he hated her at a cellular level. I've never heard of that expression before.
No.
And to say that he hates her more than Rosie West, what the? I mean, who spends their time thinking about Rose West? Of course, she was a terrible woman. And of course, he's an idiot if he hates her, Meghan Markle, more than that. But all that said, I would say he's entitled to express the views. It reveals him as being an ignorant, disgusting human being. But he still has the right, I think, to write that kind of column.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that, but Jude, there's something a wee bit disturbing. You see, Jude, maybe I have a thing. Me and my dear missus were sitting some years back, quite a few years back, and Clarkson was doing a program where he was traveling through Europe. He came up to this toll booth, a Spanish toll booth, and he threw in some money, and he made some remark to the toll booth attendant, and the guy responded. And as he drove off, he made some comment along the lines of that your man was right up there, like Manuela to Faulty Towers. It was, really nasty, cheap. Like it was punching down on somebody who couldn't punch
Yeah,
back, and I
yeah.
thought you're an obnoxious gobshite,
Well,
and
yeah,
and I've never changed my opinion.
I agree, Pat. Absolutely, all the way. In fact, I probably have a lower opinion of Clarkson than you have, if that's
Yeah,
possible. But I still would say that you have to make a decision about whether he should be allowed to write that column. And I mean, if I was the editor, it depends on what kind of audience I was trying to reach, whether or not I'd encourage him to or I'd allow him to put that column in. But he doesn't seem to have broken the law. I think he has told us more about himself than he has about Meghan Markle.
yeah. No,
Um,
I agree with the point that freedom of speech and all the rest. But you would like to think that someone would have said, "Well, look, wait a minute, this is just crossing a line somewhere." Like he should have been allowed to write the article, but somewhere along the line, this sort of to be paraded naked through the streets and a hater on a second, he could still have made the point without like that is misogyny, Jude. No matter what way you come at it.
Well, I don't know now. It's a reference to maybe that's where he covered himself. There's a reference to, as you say, Game of Thrones. Apparently, there's a scene like that. If you're going to say that he's being misogynist there, then you'd have to say maybe in the Game of Thrones in the original sequence was misogynist as well. And again,
But I think the point was being made in the Game of Thrones. This is misogyny.
yeah, maybe, yeah. Okay, here, this next one, Pat. I really, really like this one. This is about George Clooney.
Yeah.
And you tell it. You'll tell it better than me.
Yeah,
Tell us.
no, some time back, I read a couple of stories about Clooney. Clooney's sort of the half hero of mine. He's a left wing who's done, and he seems a decent guy. Apparently, when he arrived out somewhere in California as a young man, he was absolutely broke. He worked in restaurants and waiter and did all the sort of menial jobs. He couch surfed on various places and so on and so on. And anyway, he made it big, and I can't remember even the name of the program. It was a DR or something like that, or Grey's Anatomy or something like that. And then, of course, he made movies and became seriously wealthy. So apparently, about 2 years ago, he rang up all these friends and said, "Hey lads, I'm having a party on Sunday. Come on around." And they all came around, and they came in. He noticed they all noticed there's about 12 suitcases, big suitcases, packed at the door. So he says, like, guys, take a suitcase each. They're going, "What's going on here?" So anyway, they went over and sat down. He got them all a drink and sat down. He says, "Lads, I'm just telling someone." He says, "I've thought about it. When I had things were tough," he says, "you were the guys that helped me out, and I want to repay." He says, "Open your suitcases." They all opened their suitcases, and there was $1 million in hard cash. Now, Jude, how he gathered up 12, I think it's 12 million, 12 or 13, 12, and imagine cash, hard cash. There's $1 million, there's $1 million, there's $1 million. No, no. And apparently they're super big suitcases. So anyway, one of the guys has done quite well. And he says, "George, no, I'm not taking it." He says, I'm okay. I'm wealthy enough." He says, "No, you're missing the point. When I needed help, you gave it to me." So he says, so on. And obviously, I thought it was very decent. And it's good to see that there's decency still left in the world, that people just don't, what does Jesus say? The few who say thanks.
Yeah. Can I cast a little shadow over that story?
Right.
It's a really good story, marvelous. And I like yourself, I love George Clooney. I think he's in some terrific movies, and he's so funny, and he's just he's a terrific guy. When he came to Hollywood and was doing all this busboy stuff in restaurants, his auntie was Rosemary Clooney.
Yeah.
Don't you think his aunt would have given him a leg up?
No, apparently it wasn't true. Yeah.
Well, okay. The next thing is this. See what if he had 12 or 13 million pounds in cash in that room, had he got lots of guys with guns outside it? Because
apparently he had and the weeks beforehand he had gone to someone like security guard because he wanted to give them hard cash, not a check, not something that they could refuse.
That's great. I don't know, Pat. Yeah, look, he could have put that money in their account. Actually, the way he did it was much more dramatic and marvelous.
I think that's I think he's an actor, Jude.
Yeah, that's it. An eye for a scene, a dramatic scene.
He saw it in his mind.
Yeah, I'll have to hand it to him, or rather, he handed it to him. It is a terrific story. I hope it's true. I hope it's
I hope
true.
I hope it's true. And all the you see, I thought it was. I remember reading it some time ago, and I thought it was one of these urban myths. But I read it there quite recently, and apparently it's true. So
It's a
I
good
like
one. It's a good
until
one.
somebody
It
says,
is a good one. And you could sort of believe it of Clooney. He looks the kind of guy who might
uh,
actually have that generosity of spirit. Um, you
aye,
asked the question, Pat.
Doctor, go ahead,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Pat.
No, no, I was going to move off topic. So if this is related, go ahead.
You asked the question when you sent that to me, that thing about that story of Clooney's. Had I ever, what's the most generous thing that's happened to me?
Aye.
And nobody has ever given me £1 million so far.
No, that's for
In
sure.
cash. They keep putting it in my account, and I think that's boring. Why don't they put it in a suitcase? I'll be honest with you, Pat. I can't offhand. I suppose I think of something. Here's one. This sounds terrible, but it's true. I remember Jimmy Sharkey putting me in touch with that guy, that consul guy who looked after me so well. I think it was San Francisco he was in. And I just thought that was, and you told a similar story about Jimmy,
Jim,
even more generous. I suppose that had come as near as generous in that sense of doing material things for someone. But I'll be honest with you, the things that I'm grateful to people for, I mean really, really grateful to people for, is their presence in my life. What kind of people they were, what sort of ways they treated me, what things they encouraged me in. That sounds very pie in the sky, doesn't it? But that is the truth. I thought hard about it, and I think that's true. I feel more grateful to the man who taught me that I could have fun with books.
Yeah.
Than I would if he'd given me £1 million. Because
that was a rich gift, exactly.
Yeah. So what about yourself then, Pat?
No, there was when I sent you the wee note. What was going through my head, I remember, and I'm not naming him because it might be embarrassing for his family. When I was a young reporter, me and my dear missus, junior reporters were paid pittance. And anyway, after we got married, and we were living in this sort of mobile home, and I was trying to save transition between a mobile home and to buying a house. So one day, this man I worked with, who was reasonably wealthy, no, not rich, he was just better off than I was. And we were chatting, and he says, "What are you doing, Pat?" And I says, he says, "Much do you need?" And I says, "About 1,400 quid." He went out and came back. He says, "I'll give you the money." And I says, "What?" He says, "I'll give you the money." He says, "All you have to do is pay me back." And Jude, I paid him back, but he gave me the money, and it was such decency that, whatever. Now, and I've never forgotten it, by the way. That was one of the decentest things that ever happened. But here's a very simple thing. Last week, I have a neighbour up the road. I'll even name him, Charlie Darty, decent man. We live down a sort of hollow, like a sort of basin, and there's a road up and a road then down. And anyway, Charlie has a tractor, and last week and it was heavy snow, there was 4 or 5 inches of snow on my driveway. Charlie came down and cleared the whole thing first so that we could get out and in. Last Friday evening, Thursday evening. The ground started to really freeze up, like it was like a bottle after the thaw started, and it was like glass. And we were coming up the lane, I couldn't get the car up, and I had to park at the bottom of the lane. Charlie came along about an hour later. She says, "Pat, give me your keys." And he went down, got my car, and we brought it up to my driveway. Unasked for, I didn't request anything. And I'm sort of saying, you should put in record, I think it was Jesus said, "So few people say thanks." And I thought, simple things like that. That's Charlie would probably say, "Jesus, Pat, cop yourself on." But I was so on the record, Dr. Collins, that was decent.
What is the Irish phrase? What is near fuckle why fakel rio? A good word never broke a tooth, and a good act never broke a tooth.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a karma thing too. My father always believed that. That if you did somebody a good turn, or if you gave money to charity, whatever, that you actually got it back. He was
Yeah,
convinced of that. He said it was a very
yeah.
good investment.
I,
But
I thoroughly believe I am absolutely 100%. In fact, to just revert to back to Clarkson, I think a lot of what Clarkson, he was getting away with nasty, vindictive, sort of malicious sort of stuff, as passing off as humor and
yeah,
a sort of feeding a certain type of nastiness. I
yeah.
think karma's come back to bite him in the bum.
Yeah, you could be right. Could be right. Another thing I was wondering was, are there certain kinds of people? We talked about this before, or something similar. There are people who draw happiness to them.
Yeah,
They somehow attract happiness. They themselves
yeah,
appear to be happy, and they make people around them somehow happy, even by their presence. I'm wondering
yeah.
if there isn't, in fact, something similar in terms of people who get generous acts done to them.
I think
And
so.
dare I
Dude,
say
isn't
it?
there?
Dare I say it? You might be one of them, Pat.
Oh,
There's people who respond. You respond to people. I think if people are warm and alive and generous in nature rather than in action, right? I
yeah.
think people respond to that.
Thanks very much. By the way, no, Jude, someone. What does they say? There's some people bring sort of happiness in the room when they come in, and there's
Mm.
some people who bring happiness when they leave.
You see a mad rush for the back door.
Here I come. Here I come. We're still on air. She doesn't believe me.
That's all right. She had to decorate the set by all sorts of ways. Okay. Okay. Right. That's
That's the best interruption we've had. Keep going, Jim.
that's even better than the guy who was doing the talk and the kid came into the room. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that. That's so funny.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
No, here's just to go back to some of them.
Yeah.
No, I was reading today. The former Justice Minister Claire Sugden.
Oh yeah.
She says people in Northern Ireland, I presume even across Britain, are losing faith in the police. She says, "No, this thing. There was 9 officers sacked
Yes.
last year, right?
Yes.
There are 74 cases ongoing, and 32 officers have been suspended for either sexual or domestic or whatever. I'm not quite sure. And right, Jude, that comes in the wake. Remember last week of the guy in the Metropolitan Police. I think his name was it David Carrick.
Something like
He
that.
admitted
Yes.
at least. He admitted what is it? 49, at least 49 offences against women, multiple rapes, coercive control, and all the rest of it. So, Jude, what do you think that has? As your faith in the police, by the way, not just PSNI and policing, what's your view of that?
Well, it's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous, because when people hear about this senior figure in the police who, multiple cases of rape and abuse and all sorts of stuff with women, using his role as a police officer to do it, I mean, that's got to shake the very foundations of the public faith in the police. And not just here, but, we'll begin to see here in PSNA also. There's some cases where people are under investigation. I cannot think of anything that would do more damage.
74 cases ongoing. 74 cases ongoing.
The other thing is this, Pat. It's true that is awful. It is absolutely awful.
Yeah.
But don't forget, if you were black and living in London, your life would have been one of nervousness and opposition and maybe violence at the hands of the police for all your life.
Yeah.
We need to keep that in mind as well. It's not a new thing that the police tend to see. Power does corrupt. There's no doubt about it. There are people, when they get a uniform on them, my God, they just can't help themselves but to become their lesser nature begins to manifest itself. But that is pretty.
But there's been numerous examples in recent times, and I think note some of that. While it's not directed, I think the presence of cameras, and phone cameras and so. Have you ever watched the American police? I would love to know. Well, not love. That's the wrong expression, but I would be interested in how many beatings and how many absolute racist attacks they carried out over years, because the number which are now going on social media of American police acting like absolute thugs is, I know this claim, oh, that's just a few bad apples. By Jesus, I'd love to get the barrel to find how many bad apples there are really in it, because there seems to be a hell of a lot.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I wonder, are you thinking that American police are particularly prone that way, or?
They were certainly prone to violence. I had a friend he's dead now. He's a councillor in Kenny, and he had a friend who was a cop in America, and the guy had an Irish background, and your man sort of half admired him. And the American cop said to my friend, "Hey, they don't mess around with us when we've got this," and he pointed to his gun. In other words, they're they shot. I think a lot of time they use force, including shooting first and then asking questions later. Like the
Yeah.
American cops are nasty, nasty people.
But you see, again, there's always another side to things as well. One of the nicest people I met on several trips to
Yeah,
the
I know
north,
the guy.
you know what I'm talking about? I mean,
Yeah,
the guy's absolutely a model. I mean, there's a guy I think that enriched my life by just talking to him.
yeah,
So it's really terrible because it really undermines people who are innately decent,
yeah,
and it also takes people who are weak and corrupts them because they just
yeah,
they give in to all the temptations. Okay,
yeah.
let's go a wee bit less high flying and talk about Micheál Martin. Micheál thinks that Ireland, that is your stating, not our stating, but your stating, shouldn't be involved in sending Panther tanks to the Ukraine. He believes it's support for holding Russia to account for war crimes, and he believes in supporting the Ukraine into the EU. That's fine, but no military stuff.
Yeah.
How do you what is your minister? He's your Taoiseach. What's your views on that? You got a problem?
I don't know. Jude, we probably don't have any Panther tanks to send anyway, for starters.
That's a good point.
And the second point, I see the German foreign minister, whose name escapes me again. He's saying that there's no reason that Germany won't send them. So I take it. Now, the point is, Ireland is a neutral country,
Neutral,
and has
yes.
been neutral, and that's supposed to be where we're staying. And it's Martin and the others have said in the past, we are willing to send humanitarian aid and any other sort of stuff, but we will not send military equipment. Now, maybe in a wee small island like us, we can afford to take that position. But maybe if you're in Poland or Latvia or something, when you see what the Russians have done and so on, maybe you might, and Germany, of course, you might take a different view.
Yeah, I was wondering about the whole thing about the south of Ireland's neutrality. It's a funny thing, really. I would, incidentally, I would totally support the notion of the South being neutral. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. I think somebody's got to give a lead to the world, or at
Yeah.
least there must be some countries who say, look, we're not going to go killing people. I
Yeah.
just think it's such a primitive way of resolving any differences.
Yeah.
I'll kill you.
Yeah.
You don't agree
Yeah.
with me, you're doing something I don't like, I'll kill you. And
Yeah.
we'll organize it at a high level, so we'll kill hundreds and thousands of you. So I applaud Ireland having officially a neutral stance. But then I look at examples and I'm not sure. See, the fact is, Micheál Martin is not neutral, nor is the South's government with regard to
No.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're not neutral. They are totally on the side of the Ukraine. So that's not
Yeah.
neutrality. That's not
No.
neutrality.
It's a bit like Ireland was neutral on the side of the Allies during the Second
That's
World
right.
War.
That's right.
Yeah.
They called it the
Yeah.
emergency. Well,
The emergency.
there's something, maybe it's too hard. I tell you, the people I really always admire, I'm sure I've said this before, are the Quakers.
Yeah,
They
I'm
just
the same.
say, no, totally opposed to violence. And that's it. Full stop.
Aye. Yeah.
So once you start saying, well, we're neutral, but we're neutral and but we're allowed to have opinions. We'll side with people.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
still neutrality. It's not neutrality. You're now on somebody's side. So
Yeah.
I just like to see them grappling with what words mean.
Yeah, well, I think Ireland's neutrality, Jude, has been suspect for a very long time. It's where I think they were neutral in name only, and I think had we a whole lot of spare tanks, the Ukrainians probably would have got them. By the way, not that I have any big opposition to giving the Ukrainians. Ukraine didn't invade Russia; Russia invaded Ukraine, irrespective of what arguments went on in the background. So anyway, but I haven't said that. My opinion is very much on your side. we shouldn't be like, if the first thing we do is to send armies to kill people, it's not you can use, Ireland doesn't have a lot of military power, but we have a lot of influence, soft power. So let's use that.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. That's it. Actually, you play to your strengths. The strengths the Irish people have is that soft power, and they should be using it. In fact, I was going to say, there's a certain thing that haunts many Irish people, particularly Irish parents who have got sons, and that is that one day the EU army, which is being developed, will be part of the deal for Ireland being part of the EU. I mean, the very notion of saying, even take this example of Ukraine. Most people like yourself would say Ukraine were terrible injustice, and that's a terrible thing that Russians did to them. But would any of us say, and I feel so strongly about it, I want my son to go out and fight there?
Not at all. And everybody thinks that when you're on the side of Ukraine, that you don't think that what the NATO was and the West has done is, I don't accept that they were far from blameless either. Some of the things NATO were doing, like they were nearly surrounding Russia and so on. But in terms of bad boys, I think Russia gets a 9 and NATO gets about a 5. So you make up your own mind.
Yeah. Okay, we're really short of time, Pat. Just 3 minutes now. But like me, I watched parts of the game on TG, or the games on TG Car. Yes, Sunday. Yesterday. And I was disappointed to see the Northern teams, as I suspected, both being beaten. Is there something? I mean, is the GA? Well, two things. Are GA standards in the north not as strong as the GAA standards in the south, skill and ability? And secondly, does the GAA play a different role in society in the north than it does in the south?
I think when it comes
to answers.
Well, here's the quick version. I'm going to generalize. See, when it comes to football, I think the standard in the north, everybody on a par with in the south. Like Crossmaglen Rangers won the All Ireland Club Championship for years. And Waddy Graham's yesterday. And I was chatting to a GA man this morning, in fact, about an hour ago, a big GA man in Derry, and he says Waddy Graham's they could have won the match. He said on at least 4 occasions they went for goals. When they gone for points, they would have got the points and they would have won the game. So he says, and they were. Hey, Jude, I was listening to it on Radio Nagilta for a wee while yesterday because I was out, and I comparing it nip and tuck. When they scored, and and so on. So now, but when it comes to hurling, Jude, it's there's a difference between night and day. That you go get somebody from Tipperary, Wexford, Limerick, Cork, Derry, Donegal just aren't at the races. Now, Crossmaglen not Crossmaglen. Glens of Antrim might be the only place that comes anywhere close.
I was going to say that, you're right. And the trouble with that is that they're drawing in such a small pool. There may be really good hurlers there, but you're not drawing on a pool that's, got thousands and thousands and thousands of people in it, which is the case with the South. It's funny, when you were growing up, was hurling a feature? Would you have had a hurling?
Well, I live in a place called Burton. Hurling is really big here. But hey, Jude, this is a wee small village or area. If I went to Letterkenny and you walked down the street with a hurl, somebody would be looking at you. What in other God's that?
You're looking for somebody you're going to settle a score with. Did you, when you were growing up, are you saying that hurling wasn't a part of like football?
In Letterkenny, there's 2 GA clubs, and St. Eunan's is a big club. And when I was growing up, Jesus, they could get several thousand at a match on a Sunday. GA was really big, but hurling,
football, but not hurling.
Not hurling. Hurling, it'd be 3 men and a dog.
Okay, with that unhappy thought.
By the way, do you want my wife to come back in again? She brings happiness into her life.
She had her chance.
Right,
okay, Pat. We'll set it up for the next time. Set up for a more extended run the next time. Okay, bye.
See you.